Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and it's so great to have the opportunity to really build on the great discussions that's been happening over the last few days. And of course, this morning's session focused on housing. You know, as highlighted by Dr. Parfrey at the health care session on Monday, we all know that access to safe, affordable, and appropriate housing is a key social determinant of health. We know that it's key to a person's well-being, but we also know, is really sort of the highlights of the discussion a minute ago, we also know that it's really key to building healthy, prosperous, and inclusive communities. And we know that LabWest has very unique challenges in that way, and a lot of discussion around that the last few days. So just to provide some context for the panel discussion that's coming up, the presentation really is going to provide a brief profile of housing in LabWest and some of the related demographics that I'm sure you'll all be quite familiar with. I did want to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about Newfoundland and Labrador Housing Corporation's programs. So as a corporation, our mandate really is focused around supporting those most vulnerable in the community, really focus on those in low income. So to share some of the programs that we have and what our presence and our partnerships look like here in your area. And as well, then I really wanted to talk about some of the broader housing actions that government is taking really to expedite the housing supply across the province. So that's sort of the outline for the presentation. Just before I begin, I did also want to acknowledge that 2 of our 10 board members for Newfoundland Labrador Housing Corporation are from Labrador. One is Noreen Corrine, and unfortunately Noreen, I know, couldn't be with us today, but I'm sure everybody here knows Noreen, a great advocate in the community for so many years, and a great board member as well. And Colin O'Brien, I believe is here somewhere in the audience. He's here participating in the summit as a member of ACOA as well. So two very strong voices on the board that bring Labrador issues to the table all the time. So just getting into the presentation now. Is it moving?
And on the presentation?
Oh, yes, yeah, they had it earlier. Technical challenges.
The gentleman is behind, don't have the presentation.
Sorry about that.
No, we've gone 3 days before our first snafu. It's a new record, I think.
If I knew some good jokes, I'd tell them, but I don't. The minister is a good one for jokes.
Hey, Lydia.
Okay, I think we're ready. Sorry about that. So just to get into some of the brief profile of housing and the related demographics, and I just did want to preface that the data is the most recent available data, the 2021 census. So of course, you know, things have changed slightly from 2021, and in any area, these areas, most of these numbers have all gone up, with the exception of vacancy rates, which have all gone down. So based on that information here, the population close to 9,400, with a small increase certainly in recent years as well. A total number of occupied private dwellings of over 3,800, and a much younger median age here compared to the provincial average. Next slide. So the average value of the dwellings in 2021, and these are self-reported data, is higher in Lab West than the provincial average, and the higher average household income in Lab West is much higher than the provincial average. On the far right of this slide, you'll see the private dwellings I referenced a minute ago, and most were really constructed in that period between 1961 to 1980. And this period similarly saw right across the province, right across the country, a lot of development. And what we know since that time, and various other factors, that really the evolution of building of the construction of the housing really did not keep up, and really lended itself to the challenges that we're facing today with the shortage of supply right across the country. The bottom part of the slide really is looking at the structure types here. And the majority of the dwellings are single detached, with other types of semi-detached row housing and some apartments as well. Next slide. So looking at the top of this slide here as well is looking at the prevalence of home ownership. And there's a very high rate of home ownership in Labrador West, as you know, compared to renters. Labrador City is 78% home ownership versus 22% renters. Wabush at 84% and 18% renters. And both of those are slightly higher than the provincial average. But as a province as a whole, we have a very high ownership rate compared to the Canadian average of 66%. So both owners and renters report slightly higher average monthly housing costs as well than the provincial average. And those costs for owners, for example, would be your mortgage payments and your electricity, heat, property taxes, other municipal fees. And similarly for renters, it would include your rent and those types of fees as well. The bottom part of that chart is really just showing, again, that younger demographic owning and renting at higher rates than the provincial average. So the next slide. So what does core housing need? And you probably hear that referenced a lot in the housing world. It is a definition that is a term used through Canada and elsewhere. And it really allows us to have that consistent definition to look at, to determine if a private household can afford suitable and adequate housing in their community. It is used for research and program and policy development purposes as well. So when you look at that definition, what it looks at is two factors. The first factor is including the household has to be in one of the following: is unaffordable, inadequate, or unsuitable. And really what that is meaning, if it's not affordable, the household has to spend 30% or more of income on shelter costs. If it's not adequate, the housing dwelling is needing major repairs. And that they would be things like, really defective plumbing or electrical systems, foundation issues, so those types of things. And not suitable if the household does not have enough bedrooms for the size and makeup of its household composition. And really those follow the national occupancy standards as well. And then the second factor really gets into requiring that the household would have to spend at least 30% of its before tax income to access local housing that meets all of these standards. So that's what we look at in core housing need. A lot of the programs from both provincial, federal governments across the country are really designed to help take people out of core housing needs. So it's a really important metric that we do monitor as well. So just look at the next slide now. And again, this is based on 2021. We know that things have certainly shifted since then. But again, most recent one, when we look at LabWest, and well, from the factors of owner households, it may not be showing the core housing need, but it really does highlight that both homeowners and renters are reporting issues, in particular with affordability, and particularly on the renter side. And I did also want to mention that, you know, when we look at core housing need and why we monitor it as well, is because a lot of times if you are in core housing need, you are really considered precariously housed and at risk of homelessness. So it is that one of those important metrics that we monitor. Next slide, please. So we also, another metric that we monitor, of course, and shows housing demand and need is our Newfoundland Labrador housing wait list. And we know, again, over the last few years, we have seen such a significant increase in this wait list. We're over 3,000 right now in the province. And similarly, you know, we're looking at those issues. We know they're due to lots of factors that we're all quite familiar with over the last number of years, like the cost of living, the higher rents, the tightening rental markets, increased rent interest rates, more challenging to build homes, and even for first-time home buyers to move into homes. So there's not that transition out of the rental market as well. So all of those factors are putting much increased pressures on our programs and on our wait list. So here in this area, we currently have 20 households on the wait list. And again, we have seen that number rise, and you'll see particularly in more recent months. And we were fortunate to be able to move a number of households into some of our units more recently, brought the number down, but we're still at 20 here in the area. And when you look at sort of some of the profile of those individuals, again, on the wait list, it represents about 20% of our wait list for Labrador. 45% are single individuals with no dependent. 90% are under the age of 50. 50% are female-led households, and 85 are seeking 1 and 2 bedroom. And that's, again, a challenge that we face in all of our areas in the province with our housing stock, that our housing stock was built, again, and similar to those timeframes I mentioned a minute ago, where we had bigger families. We were building 3 and 4 plus bedrooms, and our wait list now, predominantly 90% is over seeking 1 and 2 bedroom, and it's quite the opposite. We have like about 20% of our stock is 1 and 2 bedroom. So a lot of what we're doing as we're moving forward is to actually build to that demographic of the 1 and 2 bedroom units as well. Okay, the next slide. So this slide is just really a depiction of the housing spectrum, often called the housing continuum, and it really is showing the whole range of housing options, you know, that would and should be available in a community, right from emergency shelters for those experiencing homelessness that unfortunately we do need, and they are very important, to transitional and supportive housing that includes temporary accommodations with supports, through to community housing or public housing like stock like ours, as well as home ownership programs, so market rentals and homes that are acquired at market rates. So the next few slides are just wanted again to speak more particularly to Newfoundland Labrador housing programs, and again our presence and our partnerships here in your area. So next slide. So if you look at this area of the spectrum around homelessness and emergency shelters, we're very, very fortunate to have a very strong partner in the LabWest Housing and Homelessness Coalition. We work quite closely with them. During the last couple of years, we actually used a couple of our units here in Lab City. One is used for a furniture bank, and the other one is used actually for an emergency shelter. It's a 3-bedroom unit. So we provide that unit and partner with the Housing and Homelessness Coalition. We provide funding for the staffing and operations of that. It's been a really, really key, you know, a necessity really here in the community. And I think I would say to you, you know, we look at, I don't have all the data on the homelessness, but is another area we certainly see increase significantly over the last couple of years for sure. We're over 400 individuals province-wide. And, you know, these types of services are so key in the communities. And we've been really fortunate to find those partners and to work with those individuals. So we're actually looking at expanding that service here now in the city. and in town here as well. And we also provide funding for a housing support worker with the coalition. And I'm not sure if you're familiar or aware that they're here as well, but they are a real key resource here in the community. They are the boots on the ground that meet individuals experiencing homelessness on a daily basis to really connect them to the supports and services. So that position there as well, and a tremendous service here. We also have Hope Haven Transition Home. So this is a transition home for women and children fleeing violence here in the town. And we also provide that. And we've worked with the federal government and the municipality industry as well in supporting a build here at Hope Haven, a new 7-unit second stage housing development here that will be open soon. Again, really big critical resource here for the area. Okay, the next slide, please. So Newfoundland Labrador Housing is the largest landlord actually here in the province. We have over 5,600 units province-wide. We have 250 in Labrador, and here in the Lab West region, we have 88 units. And you're probably more familiar with them over generally in the Cavendish area. Rental assistance benefits is another big program of ours. So what that program is it helps support individuals who are needing financial assistance in the private market. So the individual household would pay 25% of their net income, and our program would step in and fill the gap between that and the market rate here. So again, that 25%, if you remember a minute ago talking about the core housing needs. So we always want to ensure that we're trying to make sure people are not paying any more than that 30%. So our programs, both in our units and as well in the private market, our families would pay 25% of net income. So that's a really important benefit. I would say to you, we have few here, and I think that part of the challenge is the supply here. So we would love to see, again, that benefit be able to expand here in Lab West, and it all connects back into housing supply issues as well. We also have an affordable rental housing program. So there was a program that existed for many years, and there were a significant number of units, 1,600 built across the province. Again, here we saw 15. So again, the number is fairly low from that perspective. And I think we were always challenged, and even as I talk about the next program. So this was a new program we launched just this year that we actually invested $80 million to actually help support rental housing development right throughout the province, and is open to private sector and community housing sector. So it steps in with a per capita grant for each unit. And then we've also worked with our federal counterparts to help design our programs so it kind of aligns with a lot of the criteria of the federal programs so that you can stack the programs, so you can come in. So a lot of our proponents for that program, and there were 91 of them, building over 900 units, they were able then to go into the federal programs and get really low interest rates. So those are the things we're trying to work on together to be able to continue to incentivize. And then the GST and the HST rebate piece is available. So it is all about bringing down the cost of development for the developers. So unfortunately, again, we did not receive any applications from Lab West. So it's about trying to look back and say, why, we know the cost of building here is higher. But how do you look at those programs where you have low interest financing and grants per unit and other issues? So how do we work to understand and have further discussions on the barriers to those types of programs? So that would be really important as well. We do know, though, that we are anticipating an application from the Seniors Pioneer here. We've been working with them quite closely for a while, and they're working really, really hard to advance a project for seniors and aging in place. And one of the presentations actually you're going to see after this one is the work of the consultants. So we are supporting the pioneers with some funding, I guess, to look at pre-development costs. So the land sites, assessments on the sites, cost for an architect to design and do costing for the proposals. So that work is underway now, and you'll see a little bit of a presentation in a few minutes on that one. Next slide, please. So again, it goes back to really recognizing that we have such a high ownership rate here in the province. And so, how do we do that? How do we support families in lower to moderate income stay in those housing? And so it offers financial assistance in repair programs. So home repair programs, again, a lot of focus around the windows, the doors, the roofs, siding, electrical, plumbing, and all those types of things. The home modification program is really focused on accessibility modifications. So for mobility needs and for persons with disabilities as well. And home energy savings program on energy efficiency modifications. So again, looking at that program, and again, that's available here as well. So the next slide, please. So that's really talks about some of the programs that we have as a housing corporation, and just really kind of now reflecting on the housing supply challenges and really what we've all seen as a very significantly changing landscape over the last few years with the growing housing shortage, inflationary costs, availability of materials and labor, which has been a challenge. And we felt that as well as we're building units and you know, repairing our units, the cost and the labor has very much impacted operations as well in that regard. You know, we see increased interest rates, the length of approval process sometimes for permitting and moving projects forward, and higher mortgage rates, increased housing prices, lack of supply of new homes, and again, even the, you know, incentivizing people to move out as first-time home buyers as well. So all of those and added on to a growing population, you know, has really changed that particular landscape. So when, you know, we recognize again the impact predominantly very much on you know, marginalized and vulnerable populations, and that's where our social programs really come into play to help support individuals in lower income. But we also recognize, you know, the very unique challenges again here in Lab West. You know, we hear and we understand a lot of the challenges around that workforce housing and the need to have that supply of housing here for workers to come, to live, to stay, to put roots, to stay, retire and stay, you know, so, and really how do you support all that, and how do you support all the economic development that comes with that? So, you know, that's a real issue I know right here now. And again, just talking about the seniors and wanting to downside from homes that they've lived in and they're ready to move, but they're the options move into housing that's age-friendly housing options for seniors is not here as well. So how do we support that as well? So all of those needs, and I think really then, and I'll move to the next slide, sorry. You know, recognizing all those needs, you know, the province recently really launched in October 2023 a 5-point plan. So I'm not sure if you've seen this plan, but it's on our website. I've embedded a link there as well through the presentation, as you will receive those as well, I'm sure. But what does that look like? And it's all designed to work to develop a supply of housing and bring down the cost of development. And that's what these plans are about. So there are, again, five pillars here. It's removal of the GST, HST, which you're probably familiar with and working with the federal government on that one. And again, that is retroactive to September. So developers are aware of that particular program to help, again, bring down the cost. We have a low interest financing program that was just launched again. And this again is just access to low interest rates when you're building purpose-built rental. Use of available provincial crown land and buildings, and that has launched. There were some properties identified in St. John's area that are more recently announced, and they're looking at other ones to launch throughout the province as well, again, to try to provide that land to developers to bring down the cost. A home ownership program. This is a first-time home buyers program. This is one that's launched through Newfoundland Labrador Housing Corporation. And again, it provides a loan. It's a 5-year, no payment, no interest for 5 years, and a very low interest rate after that. And that particular program is to help support individuals that sometimes the down payment is the barrier to get into home ownership. So it's be able to provide you that as a loan for those 5 years to do that. And as well, it supports closing costs as well, up to $1,500 to match the federal program. So trying to incentivize first-time home buyers as well to transition. And a secondary and basement suite incentive. So I don't know if you've heard about this one, but again, it's all designed to really kind of unlock supply in existing homes. So these would be for homeowners that have excess space in their home and they want to build a basement suite or a secondary suite, and they can get a grant up to 50% of the cost of renovations, up to $40,000. And in return for 5 years, they keep the rent a little bit lower than affordable rate. So to make it affordable for individuals. So that's the 5-point plan. And next slide. And although this is a federal, and MP Jones, forgive me, but I just did want to highlight this as well. This is not a provincial program, but I think it's really, really important to highlight that again, in the more recent fall economic statement, there is similarly initiatives and measures launched by the federal government. Again, all very much aimed at trying to bring down costs and support housing development. So those particular ones are building more homes faster, more construction workers to build more homes, and supporting renters, buyers, and homeowners. So things under the building more homes faster is all about, again, financing availability, low interest financing, building more affordable homes, a lot of programs in here for co-ops, so cooperatives. And again, it's a model of housing that's across the country and continues to be looked at and supported. So there's some new programs for co-ops as well. And then again, similar federal lands, availability of federal lands, and launching the $4 billion Housing Accelerator Fund with municipalities. And that one was a one direct to municipalities to, again, really break down those barriers to development, incentivize construction as well. And then under construction workers to build more homes is all about, labor mobility, and also looking for prioritizing construction workers for permanent residency. And again, looking at some of the issues on the short-term rentals, which again, we see and hear a lot about in Canada, but we also see that here in our province and the impact that that's having as well. So a lot of more information available on these various measures. And again, I did embed a link in here. And there's also a website on the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation. Again, it's a federal program, a lot of diverse programs there as well for that. So certainly encourage everyone to look at that. So I'm going to conclude, and I just, really want to acknowledge certainly the needs of the more vulnerable in your community and the importance of programs to be in place to support individuals to access affordable, safe housing. But also, again, those unique challenges here in Lab West. So when you think about those challenges, you think about the programs that are available to bring down costs and try to work with developers to do that, the unique, models that are in housing, and I should say, and maybe the minister will probably reference later, we are working with our Atlantic counterparts as well in housing. Similar, so many challenges around housing and looking at how do we work together as Atlantic provinces? What do we look at procurement? How do we look at models of housing? The modular, mass timber, all kinds of different initiatives there. So how do we look at that? But really, I guess it is really building on the theme of the last couple of days, because I do believe, it is about collaboration. It's about the federal, provincial, municipal governments, our industry partners, our community. We all need to come together. We need to work together, more important now than ever. And how do we do that? And how do we look at those innovative housing solutions? So I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more about that, of the panel coming up now. So thank you very much.
All right, so we'll get started. And I think on this one, I'm going to give each representative, and please hold it to about 2 minutes, rather than it being a speech, just be a quick 2 minute. Where do you think we are? And where do you think we need to go? So Belinda, we'll start down on your end and we'll work this way.
You said 2 minutes.
Or less.
All right. 2 minutes, Ed. What do you click? Housing Labrador West means more from the summit. Housing Labrador West means a lot more than just housing for seniors and most vulnerable. My biggest fear as a mayor, I said it the first day, my biggest fear as a mayor, I'm going to talk faster now. Biggest fear as a mayor is tent city. That's something, we don't have snow clearing. We do have a few things like that, but to wake up on August and have tent city on the mayor's lawn at the council would not be a nice thing. So I think there's a lot of work been done so far. This is the avenue that we're going to get better. I see a lot of people from the housing, the pioneers and the different groups around the community that are involved. Look forward to actions coming out of that. We've done a lot of work with it. Previous council done a lot of work with it, but it's time for action. As Carson keeps reminding me, it's time for action to get it done and not just talk about it anymore. It's important for our community and it has to go. And you got to remember, it's not just about seniors housing. It's not just about social housing. You got to take care of our youth, our seniors, and our most vulnerable. So out of this, it has to be part and parcel. So if we take care of the seniors, we might take care of our youth because they got a house to buy. If we take care of our youth, then maybe the youth will take care of the most vulnerable when it helps them when it comes to accessibility and stuff. So biggest thing in anything we do here is to take care of the seniors, the youth, and our most vulnerable, get that housing on track. I look at one thing I want to say. I talked to a friend of mine last night because I had to reach out and call. And I said to him, in 1988, you told me that you were a student hired from CMHC. What did you do? He checked houses for 4 months because there was 444 vacant here. So again, that's the risk we're afraid to take because of the 444 were vacant, but it's time to start taking risks and get some housing, get the seniors set up who built the community.
Thank you.
2 minutes? Oh, oh, Ron's timing me. I'm watching you now.
You have a minute, 58 seconds.
Listen, housing, this is nothing new here. We've been going through this for probably a decade or better. Can't hear us? This is nothing new. We've been going through this for a decade or better. The last time we were going boom and bust here, they were promoting this area as Little Fort McMurray. We were going through the same issues then. The biggest reason why we were going through that is because of the fly in, fly out. The businesses here were having to bring in the people because there was no accommodation. So then they were buying up apartment buildings, they were buying up houses and putting their workers in. So now we had a shortage. I can remember one senior lady, when one apartment got bought, there was 5 or 6 of them living in there. Their rents went up. So they asked me to intervene. And luckily the company relented for a short period of time, but eventually they rose the rates and those ladies had to leave. Her name was Vivian Brazel. And she said, you know what, Ron? She said, I can't even afford to die here now. And she didn't. She died in St. John's with her 3 daughters here. She didn't want to be a burden on her daughters, and that's why she left. So it's not new. Belinda hit it right on the head. Just touched basically on this because not everybody works with the mines or a company that makes a large salary. You look at all the people that are serving us here today. They need places to stay too. Fortunately, the companies that are bringing, especially the immigrant workers in here, they're supplying housing to them, and that's great. But eventually they move on. Where are they going to live? I know personally people that worked in the business that I work at, they had to leave here because they could not get accommodations. They're out west now. They just can't afford to live here. So we got to fix that.
All right. So if anyone knows me, they knows I talk about housing a lot. And that's because I love this place and I want people to stay here. So one of the things I've learned in this job is the housing continuum. And it's a thing that we have to take into consideration when we do design housing and stuff here. So we look at Newfoundland Labrador housing. That's obviously social housing for people who make under, I think in Labrador West, it's $60,000. That's there, but there's only a finite amount of number of units. Like Julie Mullaley just said, there's 88 units in this region. But there's also, a need for, apartments in the private market as well. And as Ron alluded to, and I'm a little bit more alluded to, is that most of those apartments in this community were bought up by private mining service companies for fly in, fly out workers. So they took a large portion of the housing in Labrador West out of the hands of the residents of Labrador West. And I also heard those stories too, where people got booted out of these apartments so contractors can live there for half the year. So now they were never replaced. So in reality, we've actually lost a substantial amount of housing in Labrador West, and we actually disrupted the housing continuum in Labrador West. So now there's people in these apartments. Then, because of federal government's changes to rules about mortgage lending, so you can't have zero down mortgages, you have to have a down payment. So people are staying in apartments and rental units longer, trying to catch up to get these down payments for these $400,000 mortgages in Labrador West. So obviously they can't afford to move out of these rental units so other people can move into them. And the housing continuum is once again disrupted. So now we have houses for sale in Labrador West that nobody can buy. We have apartments that are no longer available because fly in, fly out workers and contractors have it all bought up. And we have Newfoundland Labrador housing units, I think 20 at time now. I'll give they're getting fixed now, but there is units that were empty and that were dilapidated. The housing continuum in Labrador West was disrupted and destroyed in a matter of a decade. And this is why we have the issues here now. So to fix this now is we have to rebuild the continuum. We have to start working on housing, rental units that are affordable to everybody. We have to make changes that so we can get people out of rental units who are looking to buy a house but can't afford it because of that. So obviously we have, this is what I see right now.
See, Jordan hasn't changed. The speaker in the house always has to cut him off as well when he gets going. First of all, I'd just like to say it's great to be back in Lab West again. Last time I was here, we met with groups. I've been here twice. This is my third trip, I think. And we've certainly had great meetings with the pioneers and other and the mayors of Wabush and Labrador City. You know, we're facing unprecedented times when it comes to housing in this province. You know, you're seeing, and I'm seeing a lot of people that are looking for housing. You know, we have, as Julia said, and I'm going to have to reference a lot of things that Julia has said, but we have, you know, 5,600 units in this province. We're the largest landlord in the province. And, you know, we spend a lot of time, effort, and funding in maintaining those units. And people don't understand a lot of times that, you know, you say, well, our wait list seems to be going up and down and so on. But our number for those 5,600 units is very fluid. And, you know, because we have people in those units that move out, and then we have to go in and do renovations, cleanups, and so on. But the other thing is that I've had the opportunity as well to meet with the Labrador Pioneers, Labrador West Pioneers, and what a fantastic group. We need to get that project moving. And as minister, it's a priority. It was a priority when I was here last year, and it's still a priority. But I thought we'd be a bit further ahead. But we need to focus on our seniors here in Lab West, because that has the spin-off of that is what we're trying to take advantage of as well. The fact that people will move into seniors housing, and then that will create a market for young people to buy homes. So these are things that we want to get moving. We did hire a consultant. The consultant's report is going to be available soon. And we were hoping the consultant would be here for the conference, but she got called away. But we will certainly look at trying to move this along. When we get back, we're going to be meeting with the consultant, try to move this along and get shovels in the ground, because that's so important.
Thank you. And I appreciate everybody holding the time here. So we'll go to the first question. And when I was a young man and I started to think about buying a home, my first place that I lived when I left my parents here in Labrador City was a trailer that I rented. It's the progression that most people go through. Then I bought my first trailer and I lived in that. Then I bought a CC, which is a double duplex. And as I got a little bit further along in my journey, I got a bungalow. So it was a natural progression. And I'll ask Ron and Linda, does that natural progression, is it really, and I listened to Jordan speak, and it seems that progression, the ability to have that progression seems to be lost. Would that be a natural thing to say, that a young person or a senior who's looking for something smaller, those units are really not available? That's what we're hearing, correct? They don't exist.
Especially for seniors. You know, we've for decades have tried to attract developers here, either for assisted living or even cottages style housing, and they don't want to come here. It's too costly to do business. We even gave land. You know, we keep saying, listen, we got a chunk of land up there. If you're a developer, come on, build your cottages here so we can get the seniors out of their homes, because they're too big for them. I know one lady has to go up and down the stairs on her bum to do her laundry. She wants to get out of her house. She's too old. She can't do it no more. So the housing doesn't exist here for young people. My young fellow was fortunate enough to got in just before everybody went nuts here. Thank God. He's not burdened with a massive mortgage, but it's still substantial. But the young ones today, and the worst thing is we want it all now. You know, we want a house, we want a car, we want a skidoo, we want it all. And this, and they're laden with debt, a lot of these young people now. And that's another fear that I have, you know, so.
So then I'll move this one to Belinda. Oh, go ahead, Jordan. You have something you want to add to that? Yeah.
I can tell my story, actually, if you want. So I came back from Happy Valley Goose Bay in 2009. I moved back here and I got a job with a local contractor and I was renting an apartment in Wabush, just behind here. I was in there. I got the apartment in February and then a company moved in and bought the apartment building off of the local landlord. They came around and they basically said my rent went from, I think it was $700 to $2,000. And every single person in that building left the same month. And then he moved all his contractors into the building. So I ended up having to go out in trailer court, and I was 19 years old. I had to go to trailer court, couldn't find nothing to rent. I ended up going out and buying a rundown trailer for a decent price. And I was lucky enough that I was working a good job. So I was able to take a bit of debt on with my mortgage and I was able to renovate it for me and my wife. And I've been in the same house since I was 19 years old now. I've lived in the same house now. I'm 35. So that's the thing. And that hasn't changed since my story. Like it's just been progressing more and more and more. And now it's just off the rails. There are young people here that I know that just, they can't look at a house in town. They can't look at anything now. They're stuck in the places they are and they can't move laterally any which way. So we have nowhere to go because what's available being sold right now in the market is just absolutely unaffordable. And they can't get the down payment, enough money saved up for the down payment that they need to put onto this mortgage. And then they're not moving out of rental units. So people who want to come to this region and help us, because we need help here, there's no doubt about it. We need bodies on the ground here in Lab West. We need help. There's nowhere for them to move here. So they're rejecting jobs, great jobs in the region, but they're rejecting them because there's just nowhere affordable to go. So there is no continuum. The system is absolutely broken here.
Problem is, what's the solution? And I'll start with you, Belinda. What do you think would be the first step moving forward?
For me, in the last few days, from a summer perspective, I find it very humbling that I've had at least 4 or 5 developers come up and speak and didn't know this existed. I sat there and listened to Julie's presentation and I've seen a whole bunch of stuff that I as council didn't know. As council, we work all day, so we're gonna get an opportunity to do so much research, and our management team works all day. They don't get a lot of time to do this research. That's the intention of this summit. We have the mayor of Fermat going to speak to us later that apparently are doing great things. So we'll learn from them and what that looks like next. If I look at it, and I agree with Mayor Barron and our MHA, back in the day, that progression was there. So you have that natural progression. I look out and I see Norm Keats. In 1989, when I was hired with Iron Company of Canada, I bought a house for $21,000. He said, you can buy a whole row for 26. I said, you're nuts, my friend. I didn't take advantage of that. And my friend said, you're nuts. 2 years later, in 1991, I was called into an arena by my union president to tell me that 200 of us getting laid off, and I couldn't sell my house at $179 a month rent. I gave it away for $1 and someone was doing my mortgage, just so I could go back to university and get some education, because I had to do something different. So if you talk progression, no. So I went from 21,000, 67,000 in Wabush in 1996. In 2001, paid 86,000. So we can all talk progression, but I can't look back. Can't go back. So the progression is back to the seniors, the youth, and our most vulnerable, taking care of them. And we've developed that plan and take those strategies from that. If I was to think about the strongest person in the room here today for me this week, in the last 3 days and last week, and I only met at the public session, was a young man who's here. He's passionate about it. He's a community person, community minded. And one of the things that was so powerful, and everybody heard me, not everybody, but I'm sure everybody's gonna say, here she is saying it again, but I am gonna say it again. That man said the most powerful thing to me yesterday morning. He said to me, he said, when I go on Facebook and see people not looking for solutions for housing and stuff, it's a little bit struggling. So I wanna help. How can I help? He said, because I wanna make the comment on Facebook, and if I'm calling him out, I apologize, but it needs to be said, I'm sorry. He said, when I see they didn't do this and they didn't do that, he said, I want to put on there, how about we say I and we, because we are the they. That was powerful from a community member. For me. And that's the type of atmosphere we got to create and be that positive energy to make a change. We can go back, like I said, I talked to my friend last night. He was a student looking at 44 houses or whatever it was, CMHE, checking to make sure the pipes weren't busted, that kind of thing. Rio Tinto was invested here. And if you look, they're big across the world. So I'm just hoping as a mayor and have confidence that they're going to stay, because I think it's a good thing. They have good relation with the union. The union works hard with them to make everything happen. And I appreciate them as well for doing that, because they're good community advocates for us. So from that advocacy piece, one, we recognize at council when we did our budget, we're not great at advocating and educating ourselves on what's out there and what's not done. And you know what? All of it from the 5-point thing, we're all there scrambling, taking notes. You know what? We don't have time, but shame on us, because we should be reviewing that with our MHA and saying, all right, you need to go back and bring this to the table, really, because we need to get that done. And we've done that with Jordan on some things, but obviously we need to be a little bit better to feed him as well. So that's where I think it's got to go, Ed. 3 minutes? Sorry. Anyway, that's where I think it's got to go, Ed. It's collaboratively, yes, we have to learn from the past. Ron is right. There's a lot. I can't imagine, I've had it as well when you talk to residents who's been moved out there. It's heartwarming. It's heartbreaking. It certainly is heartbreaking, but let's get a heartwarming story out on the table.
So, and I'll talk to you, Minister, on this question. And we've had a successful provincial government tax credit program in Western Newfoundland, the Resort Property Investment Tax Credit. And it was initially created to support tourism recreation industry in Western Newfoundland. Is it possible to adapt or redefine a similar program? Understanding the value and the potential that's coming out of this area that we can harness. What would be your thoughts on that?
Well, we have had some conversations about the tax credit initiative, and we're certainly open to having that conversation at any time. Anything that will speed up housing development in Labrador West for us, we're always willing to do that. I just want to say that one of the biggest assets I see in this room to help us with housing here is MP Yvonne Jones. Yvonne and I have had conversations about what we'd like to see happen in Labrador West. We've had a lot of conversations around the Pioneers development, and both of us are committed to making this project move as quickly as we can. And so we rely on each other. If we're going to build a housing stock in Labrador, whether it be through Newfoundland Labrador Housing or whether it be through the province, we're going to need a buy-in from our councils. We're going to need all levels of government, municipal council, provincial government, federal government, and community partners. And one of the things that, I see here is that you have representatives from the various industries and companies in the area. And I just can imagine what they're going through in trying to deal with the labor situation here. I mean, this is a growing area. I mean, it's a beautiful town. I've been here many times because I have family here, and I always love my visits. And, we need to get together as a group and figure a way forward to build homes in Labrador City, not only for social homes, but as well for, for people to actually live. I met with my counterparts in that would be the ministers responsible for housing in Atlantic Canada. And we're all going through the same things in various regions of our provinces. There's no doubt about that. But what we did talk about was coming up with housing, whether it be modular, whatever type. What we talked about was trying to come up with a footprint for that. Try to come up with a design so that we can make that design adaptable to regions. And we got to get more pilot programs going. We all agree with that. Like whether it be modular builds or whether it be, there's talk of tiny homes, although that was part of our conversation, but not a big part of our conversation. But, we've got to get creative in building homes. And I hear that when I was here this weekend or the last couple of days. And what I also am so impressed with is the fact that everybody seems to, like when someone is talking, everybody's So the will is here. The will is here in Lab West. We just need to harness the energy. And the two mayors that I've had the privilege of meeting, they're fabulous people. They do great work in their towns. Your MHA does great work. So, you know, and we all get along great. So that's the thing. Like, we want to work together with you. And there's so much that I had to say today that I'm trying to squeeze it all into your questions. I'm sorry about that.
No,
But like, I got to try to squeeze things in because, you know, like we have 88 units here. We have 7 units that hopefully will be opening up. These units will be for units for families that are fleeing violence and so on. They'll be opening up in the spring. The premier, when he was here with me the last time, said that we'll be the 2 units that have burnt down. We're going to put 2 units back, but there'll be a multi-level. So there'll be apartments on top and bottom, but the bottom ones are going to be accessible. So these are the things that we need to move forward with. Understand that the department that I'm responsible for is involved in housing, yes, but we're looking at housing for the most vulnerable. And that's so important. And that's what, Jordan has been hammering on in the House as well, is that, like, you know, we need to build houses and take care of those most vulnerable people. And you realize what this department is dealing with in homelessness and so on. We don't want to see that in Labrador. We don't want to see it in our province. We don't see it anywhere. So, you know, there's so many things that we're doing. And that 5-point plan, I spoke to a realtor here, fine gentleman, got his card in my pocket.
moving up.
Moving up. Oh yeah, it's a great place to live. My father worked here when this was known as Carroll Lake. So back in the 50s, I would say I was only a little boy then. I should have said I wasn't born though. But anyway, but like he's looking at this and he's the messenger here. One of the messengers in this room. He can do a lot. If you look at that 5-point plan for developers, it's unbelievable. And I also had the opportunity just last night to speak to the gentleman that's looking at the co-op housing side of it. And we're already talking about that, and we're going to set him up with people that will help him through that. Like, we're going to do things to help Labrador West. And again, I got to stress, Yvonne and I want to see this Pioneers housing moved. So you got the support from provincial, you got the support from the federal, you got the support from the community. Let's get that done now. Let's not wait. Waiting is only hurting the seniors that are working on that now. That they need to move into a place now where they have their own, you know, people that are around them, that they're their neighbors and friends for years.
So on that point.
Okay.
So on that point, we are leaders at this table, and I'm going to ask Jordan and Ron to both respond to this, okay? And it's wonderful that we can highlight what the concern is. And the minister just hit on something that struck me really. How do we harness all the nods that are out here in there? Okay, so as leadership, how do we harness all this will to make things better?
And to make hello. Okay, to make the point, the follow up from some of the minister's comments actually on the seniors housing, that's a long time coming. That's been in the wheels for a long time, and a lot of people have worked tirelessly, sleepless nights, just trying to get this off the ground. And I'm glad to see that once again, and he made the commitment to me last year that this was going to get built, and I'm glad that hasn't changed, and that's fantastic. That is a key project that needs to be built, and that will be one part of a multi-part solution to this. Another part that we need to have is that the 2 municipalities need to be able to access funding for infrastructure, because if we're going to build anything here, one of the key holdups is infrastructure for developers. That's something that feedback that I've gotten, and I believe Ron got the similar feedback, is that the largest cost for when you want to develop a large section of housing is water, sewer, streets, sidewalks, street lights. That's a lot of incurred costs that developers take on that if we can find a way that we can harness some funding from the province or the federal government to build a street, sidewalks, water, sewer, make sure that everything's in place, then that way all the developers has to worry about is putting a house on a lot. If we can harness that money from either the federal government or provincial money, that would make these two individuals' lives so much easier on getting houses and development going in this town. And it's the interesting thing is we already did it last year in this region, but it wasn't for houses. It was for industrial development because the town of Wabush managed to harness some funding and got water, street, sewer built so that developers, all they had to do was put companies on lots. So we, it's already proven to spur development in the industry side. Can we find a way to take that and turn it into the housing side? Because they did a fantastic job. If anyone wants to go see it, it's out in the Wabush Industrial Park. Fantastic job done by the town of Wabush on that. Let's take that industrial thing and turn it into a housing thing. That's another good linchpin that we can actually do to spur some development in this region.
Jordan, because that's something that we've been advocating for years. This was done previously in our town. I alluded to this yesterday. Back in the early 80s, the then mayor of the town, Durham Flynn, partnered with Newfoundland Labrador Housing, and we created 3 new subdivisions basically down there with winter, snow, and Bowater extension. It took 30 years to get it developed, but it's happened. We got almost 280 new homes down in that area. So this is what we have to have happen again. It will definitely lower the cost for any development in the area. We've had lots down there now that are available that we're listing them anywhere from 80 to 100,000+. Couldn't sell them. We've got them reduced down to 75% off now. And did we sell any, Charlie, yet? A couple of inquiries too. So, there is a little bit of interest, but imagine if we had that development in place where they don't have to put their water and sewer in place or none of that. I think we will attract developers to come here. But just to add to this, it's very important that we're going to build houses. But there's also the other aspect with Newfoundland Labrador Housing. What are we doing for the guy that can't afford a house? He needs an apartment or subsidized rent, basically, with Newfoundland Labrador Housing. It's nice that we're going to see 4 units built here now shortly, but we need a lot more than 4 units. And I'll give you a little kick here. I know it wasn't you guys, but in the past, they sold off numerous units here. And guess who's living in those units now mostly? Contractors. We need some more housing built for that specific need, not just what we need for seniors. We've tried to attract seniors here for decades. I think the poor old Mrs. Stamp, they sat on our committee here for years, trying to get that to happen, and it never happened. And one of the biggest downfalls to that we've been advocating for a long time is in order to get those developers in, the Paul Orns of the world, subsidies have to increase for Labrador. And I know government's very leery that, well, we got to watch what we're doing there, because if we give it to you, everybody else is going to want it. Well, you know what? Labrador is unique, always has been. There's always got to be done a different way in Labrador, because the cost of doing Labrador, like the old adage from Mary Brown's, a little more in Labrador. Well, it's a lot more in Labrador to do business here.
So Ron, and I'll continue our conversation. Labrador is different. Okay, this area is different. On our first day, Gregor over there demonstrated what the golden egg is. So as leaders, how do you let the province know? Because I promise you, the benefits that come from here will help somebody who lives in Deer Lake, or help somebody who lives in St. John's, or those benefits that come out of here don't just help here, they help the whole province, right? So how do we communicate to everybody in the province? If you guys take some of your funds, invest it here, make this place as strong, it makes everybody else stronger. How do we go about doing that? Where do we start? Yeah, so where do we start to make that? Go ahead, minister. I'll give Ron a break.
Oh, no matter. Either one of us can answer.
Sorry, Belinda, but
Same answers usually.
again, like I said, I have so much to say. But I just want to say this while we're on that topic, that just this morning, our government and the federal government announced a funding for us to modernize and renovate our units. We should be able to modernize and renovate about 850 units. The federal government and provincial government announced an $8.7 million project, which will certainly go a long ways in repairing the units in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, particularly in Labrador West. So it gives us an opportunity to come in here, do an assessment of the units, see what's required. So this money, and thanks Yvonne for working on that. This funding was certainly something that we were looking forward to. Last year, we spent about $6 million, but this $8.7 million over 3 years will, the province will be involved in that as well. So again, that's, I guess the biggest thing that you'll see in the renovations is energy efficiency and accessibility. And these are two areas where we're constantly looking at. I just want to say something as well. Talk about the mining towns. I grew up in St. Lawrence. So St. Lawrence is a mining town. It's a fluorspar mine. My family worked in the mines, and we certainly, everything in the town revolved and evolved around the mine. And, when we were going to school, the company, that was, way back when, the company had their own area where their management and so on people lived, and they even had a school bus. And like we were appalled at that, to see a bus bringing kids to school. But so the mine closed down and then reopened, closed down, reopened, closed down, reopened. So a number of years ago, when I was mayor, which is only 3 years ago now, but I was mayor of St. Lawrence and on council for 28 years. And so the mine was going up, lots of money, lots of people were just all excited about this mine, even though the mine had some negative impacts on our people. But the mine, I'll make a point in a minute about it. But the mine was reopening. So the first thing we knew, oh my God, what are we going to do with all these people like coming into our town? We got to get ready. So we had an audit done, which COA helped with us, helped fund, and we had, you're going to need you're going to need new housing development, you're going to need industrial park, you're going to need more services, you're going to need a gym, and we're saying, oh my God, like this is going to be wonderful. Mine opened, we never had one house built in the town because people wouldn't take a chance on a mining town. That was the issue. I heard that here yesterday, and I'm thinking I can relate to that. But what I also am hearing is that, and I hear this from Belinda a lot, the town is coming of age. It's a town now where people are coming back to. People want to stay here now, right? And that's what we have to think about. And as a department, that's where my head is at. This town is coming of age. I had an uncle move out of here, moved to Brunswick, got up there, didn't like it, moved back again. So that's where we are now. You're coming of age. And now people want to stay here because you have the services, you have everything here. So that's what we have to think about. And that's why this project with the Pioneers is so important. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. And go ahead, Belinda.
And I agree with you on the golden egg, and you keep repeating it as well. So it sticks. And when that sticks, you think about it more and more. And Mayor Barron said a good point when the Mary Brown's commercial, a little more in Labrador. I don't know if the chickens didn't fly or they were that expensive to get here. I'm not sure what happened, but a little more in Labrador for Mayor Brown's. I look at that golden egg and I'll turn a little more in Labrador the other way. We deserve a little more in Labrador. Use it to our advantage. We deserve a little more in Labrador. I would also challenge, again, as you engage in, I haven't been a mayor long, just 2 years. And I remember going to M&L and hearing what homelessness really meant. I grew up doing pretty good. My dad was a contractor here, but we did live here and never worked with the mine. So we didn't have that. He'd come home on a Friday night and St. Marie would say he's laid off because they weren't hauling coke. So he mightn't have worked that night. So I know how that feels, but from affordability, like homelessness is people on couches and stuff like that. And there's a whole broad, and I sat there thinking, we have that. So we have homelessness. And when I tell people that in Labrador City, they're shocked. So it's not a one size fits all when we go at this homelessness. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the work that's been done by the people who volunteer and work hard for little money, in my opinion, on what they do to get the shelter that's up there off its feet, to get that second stage housing, to work. And I'm telling you, they need to be applauded. Yvonne said it yesterday, set the stage for across Newfoundland and Canada and what they've done there for that second part. It's not just, and it's a two-part to them. And I don't even know, like, I know they did a lot of work and I'm very proud of them, but they helped definitely with violence and different things and what that means for people who go there. But they also going into the second stage gave some people comfort of a home to the next stage. And we have to do the same thing for the rest of our vulnerable residents and the rest of our seniors and our youth. So the golden egg is out there, but it's not a one size fits all. I keep going back to my friend who is not a they person, the same as me, I and we. I keep going back, and we had a brief chat this morning, and he said, you know, we need to get this co-op, because that's a different level. But maybe there's a level to grow where people do want a house that's $500,000 if that's what they want. So how do we get there where it's not a one size fits all? Tiny homes, people talked about. We can't shut down any ideas, is my point. We have to move forward and shut down no ideas. There's no ideas too big. Newfoundland Labrador housing absolutely got a part to play at all government levels, same as municipal. And good point. Love that Jordan brought about the infrastructure. It's huge. Even as a council, we had the conversation in our budget meetings when we talk about incentivize again. I keep repeating myself, I know, but it's representative in every topic we had. And those 5 topics the last 2 days is incentivize. But again, should we be helping with infrastructure if there's someone who wanted to build a home? We don't know what that looks like, so we will. The Honor Company of Canada, thankfully, has met at the table with us talking about an agreement with a house. What does that look like for us? Is there anybody else who want to partner with us on that? Maybe Labrador Grenfell Health or something like that. So to go to that next level. So it's not a one size fits all. There's a lot of work being done. Just don't take for granted the work that's being done here. So, and again, I look at the shelter and the second stage housing as one of that. They work very hard and many hours to get that money and funding and work with the government players. And actually, from a community perspective, they can be put on a pedestal and say we can learn a lot from that and what it means for me. So very exciting conversations. I love the infrastructure stuff. I love that the money piece is coming out and we're all getting educated on it. And from this, we can only get better. But the other piece is the affordability. Even for me, and look, I can say how ignorant I was as mayor when I went into this. I have no problem with that. I can own a lot of stuff. But ignorance is bliss. But once you know, you know. As someone said to me when I was a little bit not well versed on Indigenous and stuff, and I felt embarrassed sometimes that I wasn't. And someone said to me, "You don't know what you don't know." As Ed said this morning, you don't know what you don't know. What I know now, affordability for housing is 30% of your wages. My 77-year-old mother will never move out of her house if we don't do that. Less than 30%. So that's a one size that we got to accommodate. And there's another size that maybe somebody wants to move here and work as a nurse and doctor would like to have a mid-size house. What does it look like? So let's not shut it down to one piece of the seniors and look overall for our youth, our most vulnerable and our seniors.
So, Minister, I would imagine when you just made that announcement or discussed that announcement about improving the homes and doing that, that feels good.
Yes.
It does, right? It feels good that you're able to say something like that. I'm sure, Yvonne, when you're able to make an announcement that you're helping the community grow, okay? And I'm hammering this home. I want to make sure we hammer this home. I want you to feel good a lot more often all around the province. And what we're saying here is we can grow the GDP. If you start here, then you can make that announcement in Barron Peninsula that we're going to do something really big down there. Then because you're going to have extra money to do it. We're not asking for a leg up. We're asking you to invest in something that's going to help the province as a whole. And just like the gentleman that was here yesterday afternoon describing, he doesn't want a leg up. He just wants to help. And this is what this area does. We can help everybody else if we start here and make sure that this place is viable for everybody that wants to live here. I can't say that any clearer than that. And I know I'm stepping out of what my role is here, but this is, again, this is something that I'm passionate about too. right? So I want people to understand that concept, to get that through their head. This is not about announcements coming to us. This is about us helping out everybody else in this province, everybody else in this country. All right, so we're right there on schedule. That's perfect. Is there any 1 minute quick closing remarks?
And it's just there, just to follow up, we talk about the golden egg. And we talk about this opportunity to grow the GDP of this province by 1 point something. If we can get everything together, we can actually expand this region, grow this region and grow the province's GDP by 1.9%. But the only way we can achieve that, and this is the important part we all have to think about, we all have to do our part. We need to make sure that there's housing. We need to make sure that there's healthcare. We make sure that there's educators in our community. We need to make sure that we have everything all interlined for the social side of things, for the economic side of things to take off. So this golden egg is going to be a lot of hard work, but it's also going to have to take a commitment from the federal government, the provincial government, the communities, and the residents of this region. So this is where I think like I said, we go back to the idea of our making sure that expanding and supporting our task force and our economic development officer to make sure that the minister here, he can make sure that we have housing. The minister responsible for municipalities, make sure they get minister for healthcare can help make sure that we can have healthcare workers here. But it's going to take a whole team effort and make sure that everyone's on board, because if one thing's out of place, it can't go ahead. So make sure that's the thing I want to make sure that everyone here takes away, is that make sure that we all work together to get to that nice golden egg that we all talked about earlier. It's a great prize, but things have to come to a line and we have to work on it. And that's why I think this, like I said, as something from this task force to add to their list is to talk about how do we get those different aspects of housing that Belinda talked about, because it's not a one size fits all. She's 100% right there. How do we make to sure that we can get a bunch of different sizes to come to this region and come to the table? Thank you.
Belinda had said there. I'll just remind people back in '76 when the strikes were here, 6, 7 month, 8 strike, long strikes. The government of the day, Joey Smallwood, had to revisit his budget because he couldn't live up to the commitments that he made that year. So I've said this to many premiers since my tenure on council, that, we pay for a pie. We're looking for a piece of it now. We're sick of the crumbs that you've been giving us here. We need a piece of the pie. We don't want the whole pie, just a piece of it. So that's where we need to be. The investment that this government needs to put back in this area needs to happen. We heard the premier yesterday, basically what we contribute here from Labrador West. A lot of money goes out of here. I know some of it comes back for the services and stuff that we see in our hospital and our schools, and that's drastically been reduced too. But it's time now for the government to step up and give a little back to us so we can make sure our towns are vibrant and can grow and help this province, not just our towns.
And one last comment. Yeah.
Yeah, just want to say that, I'm hearing where everybody's coming from here. And that's the reason why when I decided to come here, I was staying for 3 days, try to and talk to as many people as I could. But I got to go back to something Julia said about the affordable rental housing project that we just went through. Like we had $80 million given by the province, and we're going to be building 900 units in the province. We didn't get any applications from Labrador West, and that's something that we got to work on together. We're going to have to work with you, and I commit to housing working with the developers in this area to take advantage of that sort of program. We can grow Labrador West together. We just need to make sure that you're aware of the programs that are out there, and we'll be hopefully have another round of those somewhere in the near future, and we'll certainly work with Labrador West to see if there are people that would and developers that would like to come forward and build homes because these affordable home rentals, they are something that a lot of communities have been looking for. This round, we were able to get into the communities that didn't have any of these types of this type of development. And we will certainly make commitment to make sure that Labrador West knows about this, that, you know, we can come up and talk about the program and so on, so that we get some developers here looking at that, because I think the appetite is here now. And so that's something that we'll commit to as well, making sure that you're aware of all the programs. Like Belinda said, you know, there's a lot of things that may just get missed, but we'll make sure that nothing gets missed when it comes to housing for Labrador West. So thank you very much.